Action movies are often chaotic behind the scenes. Reshoots, budget cuts, injuries, test screenings gone wrong. Most delays can be traced to something, a name, a date, a memo. But what about the ones that can't? What about the films that were fully completed start to finish and then nothing? No premiere, no cancellation, just a void where answers should be. These weren't indie passion projects or troubled productions. These were action films with casts, crews, and distribution plans. And still, they were held back. Not because they were flawed, but because someone, somewhere, decided they shouldn't be seen or not yet. Some eventually emerged, long after their moment had passed. Others were edited into different versions before being released quietly, with no trace of the original vision. And in every case, no explanation was offered. Studios ignored questions. Directors stayed quiet. Actors moved on. Audiences never knew what they missed. But the silence? That's what made these films unforgettable. We're not here to talk about production delays. We're here to talk about disappearances. Let's uncover 15 action movies that weren't postponed for reasons, but for secrets. Fact: Shabak Wahed back in action. 1993. Roddy Piper and Billy Blanks should have been an explosive duo. Back in Action aimed to be the lethal weapon of the DTV market, lean, fast, and brutal. Filming wrapped in 1992. But the release was anything but smooth. The movie didn't arrive until well into 1993. And even then, something had changed. Fight scenes teased in early promos were missing. Dialogue had been redubbed. The tone felt uneven. Reports from crew members hinted at late-stage interference. Apparently, the original cut pushed the limits of violence for its budget tier. Executives panicked and ordered edits. Some even argued the film's depiction of law enforcement had become too raw for comfort. The result? A neutered version that arrived quietly on video shelves with little resemblance to what had first been promised. The violence was there, but the punch had been pulled. Fact: Shabak Undone, Night Hunter, 1996. Don the Dragon Wilson had never made a film like Night Hunter. A vampire-hunting martial artist in a world where myth and modernity collide? It was either brilliant or ridiculous or both. Filmed in 1994, it was bold, weird, and visually distinct, but it didn't come out. Not right away. The release was stalled for nearly 2 years. When it did finally surface, it was via a quiet video release. No interviews, no features, no fanfare. What changed? The likely answer: no one knew how to market it. Was it horror? Action? Supernatural noir? The studios couldn't decide, and in their indecision, they waited. By the time Night Hunter dropped, the moment had passed. Audiences had moved on, and a film that could have carved out its own strange little niche got lost in the fog. Some movies don't miss their window. Their window is never even opened. Fact: #3, Live Wire, 1992. A chemical weapon that turns water into an explosive. A government cover-up. A young Pierce Brosnan caught between politics and terror. Live Wire had everything it needed to hit hard in theaters, but it didn't. Instead, the film premiered on cable quietly. No press tour, no trailers, no buzz. A project that could have been a career milestone was handled like a liability. Why? There's no official explanation, but context paints a picture. Around the time of its original scheduled release, several U.S. cities were facing real-life water safety scares. Suddenly, a thriller about tap water becoming a weapon didn't feel like entertainment. Executives went silent. Marketing disappeared. And the film was rerouted straight to home video after its quiet HBO airing. There were no edits, no scandal. Just a decision to back away slowly and quietly. And just like that, Live Wire evaporated. Fact: Shabaka Arba'at Virtual Combat, 1995. Before The Matrix, before Ready Player One, there was Virtual Combat, a story of synthetic beings crossing over from virtual realms into our world. Don the Dragon Wilson starred in this lo-fi vision of the near future. It wrapped in 1994, targeting a tech thriller trend that was gaining steam. But when it came time to release, hesitation crept in. Distributors stalled. The effects, once cutting-edge, now looked clunky. The story felt dated even before anyone saw it. By the time it was finally released in the US, the genre had already moved on. Instead of being ahead of the curve, Virtual Combat was dismissed as behind the times. Some regions got it early, others got it late. Most didn't notice it at all. It wasn't a disaster. But it wasn't the future either. It was something in between, and that's what doomed it. Fact #5, The Expert, 1995. Jeff Speakman had more than fists. He had intensity, focus. The Expert was meant to show a new side of his on-screen persona, a darker, quieter, more personal revenge story set inside a prison. It was shot in 1994 and originally cut with a slow-burn tone. A few early viewers said it felt more psychological thriller than pure action. But when the final version dropped in 1995, it was almost unrecognizable. The character depth? Gone. Replaced with chopped-up fight scenes, rearranged sequences, and a generic action score. The pacing was broken. The edits were obvious. And the emotional core had vanished. Why? Some believe Speakman and the producers clashed over tone. Others suspect the studio feared low returns on a slower, more serious story and demanded changes. Either way, no director's cut has ever been released. No statements ever issued. The Expert could have been the film that redefined its star. Instead, it became a reminder of what gets lost when decisions are made in boardrooms instead of edit bays. Fact Shabaksta Street Night, 1993. Jeff Speakman was set for a breakout. Street Night had the studio backing, urban action setting, and a script leaning hard into gang tensions and rogue police. Shot in the shadow of the L.A. riots. It was meant to show a darker, more grounded edge of 90 seconds action. But it didn't roar into theaters. It tiptoed. Released in 1993 with virtually no promotion, no TV spots, and a limited theatrical run, the film disappeared almost as quickly as it arrived. A big studio production handled like a bottom-shelf rental. It didn't make sense unless you looked at the timing. In the aftermath of one of the most politically charged and racially volatile events in recent U.S. history, a movie about street warfare, law enforcement brutality, and vigilante justice was too combustible to touch. Rather than shelve it entirely, the studio quietly minimized its exposure. Street Night wasn't a failure. It was a warning that came too soon. Fact #7 The Silencer, 1992. If you go looking for The Silencer, don't be surprised if you think it never existed. Shot in 1990 and headlined by Lynette Walden, the film told the story of a female assassin embedded deep within a corrupt political machine. It finished production, but didn't release until 1992, and even then, in altered form, buried in direct-to-video bins. The box art misrepresented the plot. Key scenes were missing. No one involved ever gave interviews. It was as if the film had passed through someone else's hands and been changed. Industry rumors suggested the script had drawn too much from real-world scandals. Some say financiers demanded cuts to protect unnamed interests. Others hint at a completely different original version never released. There was no controversy. But somehow, The Silencer still disappeared. A movie about someone erasing threats erased itself in the process. Fact #8, Project Shadow Chaser 3, 1995. Franchise fatigue wasn't the problem. Shadow Chaser 3 was ready to deliver more android carnage and military sabotage under the direction of cult favorite Sam Furstenberg. Filmed in 1993, it should have hit shelves within the year. Instead, it was delayed, rebranded, and repackaged across markets in multiple versions. Some had different endings. Others even had alternate titles. At one point, the film seemed to forget it was part of a trilogy. There was no official press to explain it. No DVD extras, no director commentary, just confusion. Some blamed tangled rights between US and South African distributors. Others pointed to internal shakeups that derailed its path. Whatever the case, the version that finally arrived felt like a stitched-together placeholder, not a finished film. Shadow Chaser 3 wasn't lost. It was scrambled until no one could tell what it was meant to be. And maybe that was the point. Fact #9, The Forgotten One, 1989. Some films earn their titles by accident. The Forgotten One may be the most literal case in action horror history. Shot in 1987 with Terry O'Quinn fresh from The Stepfather, this gothic tale of guilt and ghosts was completed, scored, and fully packaged for release. It had a distribution path. It had an audience. Then, for 2 whole years, it vanished. No festival run. No shelving announcement. No negative press. When it did appear in 1989, it skipped theaters entirely. No red carpet. No interviews. Just a silent drop onto VHS. For a finished film, the delay was inexplicable and still is. Neither the director nor the studio ever addressed the missing years. No one confirmed any production issues. The industry moved on, like the film had never existed. But the questions linger. Why did a completed movie disappear? Why wasn't it promoted? And why did it quietly emerge years later without a word? Some suggest its tone was too bleak. Others believe the studio reprioritized, leaving the film behind. Or maybe someone just didn't want the public to see it. Sometimes, the best way to erase a story is to let time do the work. Fact Hassan 0. Quiet Cool. 1986. Not all action films explode onto the screen. Some barely arrive. Quiet Cool starred James Remar as a no-nonsense city cop entering a rural war zone of drug lords and gunfights. Filmed and edited with typical 80 seconds firepower, it was meant to ride the success of gritty cop thrillers. But something went wrong. The film had no major premiere, no trailer blitz, no marketing rollout. It appeared on VHS one day like it had fallen out of a box no one meant to open. There was no scandal, no lawsuits, just a lingering silence that turned into total neglect. Why? Industry whispers mention poor early screenings. Others say the film's violent tone and portrayal of small-town corruption made executives nervous. But the real answer? No one knows. The result? Quiet Cool faded before it had a chance. Buried not by critics, but by omission. Some films are killed by failure. This one was smothered by silence. Fact Hassanon, Chain of Command. 1994. Michael Dudikoff was no stranger to the direct-to-video action circuit. By 1993, he'd carved a niche with military thrillers and lone wolf missions. Chain of Command followed that formula, filmed efficiently and set for early 1994 release. But it didn't come. No press tour, no distributor push. The film sat for months without updates. When it eventually arrived, it went straight to video, almost like an afterthought. No explanation, no context. The story? A soldier entangled in oil politics and corruption in the Middle East. Maybe too close to real events. Maybe too timely for its own good. One theory claims the studio went through an ownership shuffle and Chain of Command slipped between the cracks. Others say its themes hit too close to current headlines and someone wanted it delayed until the heat cooled down. Either way, the message was clear. Don't draw attention to it. Just release it. Quietly. And so they did. Fact Shabak Wahdath Nan. Excessive Force 2. Force on Force. Elif wa tis'ami'a wa khamsa wa tis'un. Sequels usually arrive fast, especially when they're built on modest success. Excessive Force 2 was finished in 1993, with Stacey Randall taking over the lead and a clear plan to relaunch the franchise with a fresh, female-driven edge. And then, nothing. No theatrical window, no teaser trailers. For 2 years, the completed film sat dormant. When it finally appeared in 1995, it was through a quiet video release stripped of any momentum or context. What happened? Theories abound. Some say test audiences didn't respond well to the tonal shift. Others believe the studio lost confidence in a female lead holding down an action sequel. Still, others hint at re-editing conflicts, where scenes meant to deepen the character were cut in favor of pacing. But no one from the production has ever confirmed anything. Not director's notes, not interviews, not commentary. The film didn't fail, it was never truly launched. Its disappearance wasn't due to backlash, or bad reviews, or unfinished footage. It was finished, and it was ignored. Fact Hassan 3 Rage and Honor. 1992. When Cynthia Rothrock and Richard Norton teamed up, the result was always dynamic. Rage and Honor promised a gritty, fast-paced martial arts drama, and by late 1991, it was already wrapped and awaiting release. But then came the fragmentation. The film debuted in international markets before reaching the US, and not all audiences saw the same version. Scenes were re-edited, endings were changed, entire plot threads shifted depending on region. To this day, fans argue over which cut is definitive. No official reason was given for the split rollout. Some suggest studio disputes over final cut. Others believe controversial material, including intense fight choreography and implied police corruption, prompted selective editing. The sequel had already begun production by the time US viewers caught the first film. A movie designed to launch a franchise was instead bogged down by edits and delays that no one ever clarified. Rage? Yes. Honor? That's debatably. Fact. شباك واحدة أربعة Red Scorpion اثنان 1994. It had a name people recognized. A new star ready to take over. Red Scorpion 2 was supposed to be a clean handoff from Dolph Lundgren to Matt McComb, one more entry in the 90 seconds wave of paramilitary action flicks. The movie was shot in 1993, but fans wouldn't see it until a year later. The release was strange from the start. No clear branding, no theatrical push, and a marketing campaign that barely mentioned the original. Even the VHS artwork looked unrelated, almost like it didn't want to admit it was a sequel. Some blamed conflicting visions. One cut of the film leaned into over-the-top gunplay. Another tried for grounded realism. The result? An awkward hybrid that pleased no one and confused everyone. Was it studio hesitation? A failed rebranding effort? Or a quiet decision to bury what didn't quite fit? Whatever the answer, Red Scorpion 2 didn't crash, it faded. And no one bothered to resuscitate it. Fact شباك واحد وخمسة American Samurai 1992. David Bradley. Mark Dacascos. A brutal underground tournament. American Samurai had everything going for it on paper. Filmed in 1991, the movie was completed without major hiccups. It was scheduled for international rollout and had its eye on the US action market. But something odd happened. European audiences saw it first unedited, fully intact. The US market? Left waiting. By the time it finally arrived on home video, the version that showed up was shorter, toned down, and stripped of several key fight scenes. Why the delay? Why the censorship? Speculation points in several directions. Some say the blood-soaked tone didn't pass MPAA standards. Others claim internal conflicts between producers led to a reshaped release. And then there's the theory that Van Damme's dominance in the genre made distributors reluctant to back a rival title. Whatever the reason, the version American fans got was a shadow of the film that international audiences had already consumed. A story about identity and legacy ironically lost in translation. Bonus fact. The Order, 2001. It had a star, a storyline steeped in religious conspiracy. Exotic locations. The Order, starring Jean-Claude Van Damme, wrapped filming in 1999. It was promoted early with behind-the-scenes footage and teaser posters. Everything seemed ready. Then it disappeared. For over a year, the film sat in limbo. No official delay was announced. No leaks, no reports. It simply didn't come out. When it finally did release in 2001, fans immediately noticed something was off. Scenes teased in the original trailers were nowhere to be found. Characters had changed. The tone had shifted. Even the soundtrack felt out of place. It wasn't the film people had expected, it was something else entirely. Industry speculation pointed to post-production drama. There were whispers of Van Damme butting heads with producers. Others suggested religious groups exerted pressure after early cuts were deemed too provocative. What makes it stranger is how cleanly the record was scrubbed. No official director's cut exists. The original version has never surfaced. No one from the cast or crew has ever commented publicly on what changed or why. The Order tells the story of a man uncovering a long-buried secret protected by centuries of silence. In a strange twist, the film itself became part of that silence. 15 films, all completed, all delayed, and none with an explanation. Maybe it was timing. Maybe it was politics. Maybe it was fear. But one thing is certain, these weren't technical setbacks. They were intentional silences. Which of these stories stuck with you the most? And what other finished films might still be waiting, hidden in vaults, erased from schedules, never meant to be seen? Sometimes, the real drama doesn't happen on screen. It happens when the screen stays dark.